In a dramatic escalation of trade tensions that could reshape the global economic landscape, President Donald Trump has implemented a sweeping series of tariffs against China and several other countries, labeling them as the worst offenders in trade practices. This bold move, which sees tariffs reaching as high as 104% on Chinese goods, has sent shockwaves through financial markets worldwide, raising fears of a potential recession while simultaneously igniting a fierce response from Beijing. On April 9, 2025, Trump announced a temporary 90-day pause on tariffs for numerous trading partners, but notably exempted China, where tariffs are set to soar to 125%. This decision comes in the wake of retaliatory measures from China, which has increased its own tariffs on U.S. imports from 34% to 84%. "I know what the hell I'm doing," Trump asserted during a Republican event, reflecting his confidence that these tariffs would ultimately force countries to the negotiating table. He claimed that many nations were eager to negotiate in light of the new duties, stating, "They are dying to make a deal." The ramifications of these tariffs are already evident. Stock markets have experienced significant volatility, with major indices plunging in response to the announcement. Financial analysts have warned of a potential recession, citing the uncertainty created by the tariffs as a major factor. JPMorgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon noted that the current climate could lead to a recession as the market grapples with the implications of the trade war. This sentiment was echoed by former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers, who cautioned that the U.S. is facing a serious financial crisis if these trends persist. China's reaction to the tariffs has been swift and severe. The Chinese government has publicly condemned the U.S. approach as hegemonic, asserting its intent to fight to the end against what it perceives as economic bullying. The situation has escalated to a point where trade relations between the two largest economies in the world are being described as a bad marriage on the brink of an economic divorce, according to former U.S. officials. Meanwhile, the European Union has also taken steps to retaliate against U.S. tariffs, with new duties on American goods set to take effect on April 15. EU officials have expressed their desire for negotiations but are prepared to impose tariffs ranging from 10% to 25% on over $24 billion worth of U.S. imports, including tobacco, motorcycles, and steel. Finnish member of the European Parliament Ora Sala remarked on the unity within the EU in responding to the U.S. tariffs, emphasizing the bloc's commitment to finding a balanced solution. Amid this tumultuous backdrop, some countries are seeking to sidestep the fallout through negotiations. Japan and South Korea are reportedly sending delegations to Washington to discuss trade agreements, while nations like India and Vietnam have proposed concessions in the form of increased U.S. imports. Such diplomatic overtures indicate that while many are feeling the pinch of Trump's tariffs, there remains a desire to engage in dialogue rather than escalate the conflict further. As the situation develops, analysts are closely monitoring how these tariffs will affect consumer prices in the U.S. and the broader global economy, with many experts predicting that the increased costs of imported goods will inevitably be passed on to consumers. The potential for backlash against the administration's trade policies grows. In conclusion, as tensions rise and the effects of these tariffs begin to ripple through the global economy, the coming weeks will be crucial in determining whether diplomatic solutions can be reached or if a full-blown trade war will ensue. The stakes are high not only for the U.S. and China but for economies worldwide, as businesses and consumers alike brace for the potential fallout from this unprecedented trade offensive. Only time will tell if Trump's aggressive strategy yields the desired outcomes or if it leads to a more entrenched and damaging economic conflict. In a high-stakes game of economic brinkmanship, the trade relationship between the United States and China has reached a critical juncture, with each side unwilling to take a step back. This week, China escalated tensions by announcing a staggering 50% tariff on U.S. goods, effectively mirroring new tariffs imposed by the Trump administration just hours earlier. As both nations engage in this tit-for-tat war, the ramifications could be profound, not only for their respective economies but for global markets as well. The latest developments in this ongoing trade conflict highlight an increasingly polarized standoff. On one side, the Trump administration's aggressive tariff strategy has been framed as a necessary measure against what it perceives as unfair practices by China. In response, China's government has vowed to fight to the end, signaling a determination to resist what it views as U.S. coercion. As the tariffs take effect, American goods entering China will now face a staggering total of 85% in import taxes. While the minimum U.S. tax on Chinese imports has risen to 104%, figures that were virtually unimaginable just weeks prior. At the heart of this confrontation lies a complex interplay of domestic politics and national sovereignty. Scott Kennedy, a senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, notes that President Trump is navigating a different landscape than Xi Jinping, who has weathered significant political challenges in the past and views U.S. tactics as a direct threat to the Communist Party's legitimacy. For China, this is about their sovereignty. For Trump, it might just be a political campaign, Kennedy explains, underscoring the existential stakes for both leaders. China's economy is already grappling with vulnerabilities, including a severe property crisis and fears of a global recession. The new tariffs exacerbate these issues, with experts like Wu Xinbo from Fudan University likening the situation to an economic earthquake. As China prepares for a protracted struggle, social media censorship has increased, as seen by the blocking of hashtags related to the U.S. tariffs, suggesting a growing anxiety within the Chinese leadership. Despite the severity of the situation, analysts caution against assuming that a full decoupling of the U.S. and Chinese economies is imminent. While companies like TikTok and Starbucks remain deeply embedded in each other's markets, the potential for a sustained economic rift appears to loom larger than ever. Each side is engaged in a dangerous game of chicken, with neither willing to back down. The possibility of further retaliatory measures hangs in the balance, particularly if the Trump administration targets Chinese financial institutions or imposes additional sanctions. The impact of these tariffs extends beyond bilateral trade, threatening to reshape global economic dynamics. In 2024, trade between the U.S. and China amounted to approximately $585 billion, with the U.S. running a significant trade deficit. The escalation of tariffs could result in higher prices for American consumers and an immediate downturn for Chinese exporters, particularly those relying on U.S. markets for their goods. As Wang Yuesheng of Peking University notes, Chinese products have nowhere to go, indicating a dire outlook for export-oriented companies along China's eastern seaboard. Furthermore, the potential fallout of a protracted trade war could reverberate across the globe. With the U.S. and China collectively accounting for about 43% of the global economy, any slowdown in their growth could trigger a domino effect, negatively impacting economies worldwide. Other nations may grapple with the consequences of a trade war that disrupts established supply chains and dampens foreign investment. As both nations dig in for what could be a long and arduous confrontation, the prospects for a resolution remain bleak. China's leaders appear to be gearing up for an extended battle, as evidenced by the emergence of influential bloggers who are advocating for various retaliatory measures against the U.S. The trade war is increasingly being framed as more than mere economic friction. It is evolving into a broader geopolitical struggle that could redefine the landscape of international relations. Looking ahead, the situation remains fluid and the potential for further escalation looms large, as both sides continue to jockey for position. The hope for a diplomatic off-ramp seems distant. The unfolding events will not only determine the future of U.S.-China relations but will also set the stage for the global economic order in the years to come. In a stark warning underscoring rising global tensions, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has highlighted the growing military presence of China in the Western Hemisphere, particularly its implications for the strategically vital Panama Canal. Speaking at a regional security conference in Panama City, Hegseth characterized China's influence in the area as a significant threat, emphasizing that the country has established a substantial foothold through control over critical infrastructure and land. Make no mistake, Beijing is investing in operating in this region for military advantage and unfair economic gain, Hegseth stated. urging regional governments to come together to respond to this challenge while also addressing issues such as transnational drug trafficking and mass immigration. Hegseth's remarks came shortly after a tour of the Panama Canal and a meeting with Panamanian President José Raúl Mulino. The two leaders agreed on enhancing security coordination and discussed the payments U.S. warships owe for transiting the canal, a matter that has been a point of contention particularly amidst President Donald Trump's claims that the U.S. is being overcharged for its use. China's involvement has intensified scrutiny, especially given that a Hong Kong-based consortium CK Hutchison holds a 25-year lease on critical ports at either end of the canal. The Panamanian government is currently auditing this lease amid allegations of irregularities, which CK Hutchison has denied. This visit and Hegseth's comments come at a time of heightened tensions between the U.S. and China, particularly as Trump's administration continues to confront Beijing over trade and military expansion. Just a day before he noted that the Panama Canal faces ongoing threats from China, reinforcing the necessity for U.S. and Panamanian cooperation to safeguard this crucial passageway. The Chinese embassy in Panama responded sharply, accusing the U.S. of using intimidation tactics to advance its interests, asserting that Panama's business decisions fall within its sovereign rights. Hegseth's concerns extend beyond the canal itself, pointing to the broader implications of China's military strategies in Latin America. He warned that the presence of Chinese companies controlling infrastructure could lead to increased surveillance capabilities in the region, thereby compromising national security for both Panama and the United States. China-based companies continue to control critical infrastructure in the canal area, he argued, asserting that this scenario threatens the sovereignty and prosperity of both nations. As tensions continue to escalate, the U.S. is also adapting its military strategy in response to China's growing power. Reports indicate that the Pentagon is seeking to enhance joint operations training among various branches of the U.S. military in the Pacific, emphasizing the need for cohesive strategies to counteract potential threats from the People's Liberation Army. Looking forward, the situation remains fluid, with the potential for diplomatic and military developments shaping U.S.-China relations and impacting regional security dynamics in the Western Hemisphere. The actions taken by both nations in the coming months will be pivotal in determining the balance of power and the security landscape in this strategically significant area.